Hello everybody, and welcome back. As you can see, I have just changed ships, and I was last talking about the Mir Heavy Cruiser retrofits, and I brought up the Support Cruiser because of their similarities. So, I wanted to show something that's been sitting around in dry dock for a long time. A ship that rarely sees use, but I love to bring out when I do. A ship that once bore the name Enterprise, and now bears the name from another show that I happen to really like as well. The U.S.S. Agamemnon. And let's just look at it to start, because it is a lot about the looks. It is my Assimilated support cruiser. Every piece of Borg is on here, kinda, ish. A little more on that later. But damn does it look good. The Ambassador class is just amazing. I love this ship. I love the looks of it. I love flying it. I love that it uses plasma weaponry. I love that I did an assimilated one of it. What more can I say? So, obviously, because it's assimilated and Borg themed, there's going to be plasma. So I've got advanced fleet plasma beam arrays, accuracy damage ×2, a Romulan dual plasma beam bank, accuracy critical hit, the experimental Romulan plasma beam array, the Romulan hyperplasma torpedo launcher, instead of the Borg launcher. In fact, I should have the kinetic cutting beam on here. Matter of fact, it will be on here. But in this instance, I think I was just storing some of these plasma beam arrays, so it's not. And I went with a dual beam bank up front because this ship is a little more maneuverable for a cruiser. I think it's got a base turn of 7, which is actually lower than the Mir Heavy Cruiser that I was just showing you. But dual beam bank also works because the Romulan hyperplasma torpedo's there, so if I've got to stick to the 90-degree arc, I may as well give it even more of a punch. One beam from broadsiding isn't really the biggest deal, especially when it comes to STFs, and when you've got 6 others to back you up. Plus the forward arc's going to have 5 weapons, because of the kinetic cutting beam, which will replace that beam there. My Romulan plasma beam arrays, accuracy ×2, what's left of them. I used to have a full fleet of these on this ship. And then I bought advanced fleets for some reason, and used some more Rom plasma, and well, it just kind of turned into this. And then obviously I went with the Assimilated set. Everybody should be familiar with the Assimilated set by now. What doesn't get a lot of spotlight with the Assimilated set is the 3-piece bonus, which is actually pretty good. It's not the Assimilated tractor beam, because that's a tractor beam with a 3-minute cooldown, which kind of sucks. It causes more kinetic damage if, you've used the kinetic cutting beam recently, but that's it. But with the multi-regenerative shield array, which is the 3-piece bonus, while any shield facing is below 20%, incoming damage has a 10% chance to trigger multi-regenerative shield array, similar to the hull repair ability of the set 2. Gives you 90 shield regeneration per second to each facing, and this goes on for 10 seconds. It reduces damage to shields by 50%, continuously removes hazard debuffs for 10 seconds, which, if I'm not wrong, reduces, that'll remove plasma fires and radiation damage too. It can't happen more than once every 60 seconds, but it happens every 60 seconds. It's like having the effects with a hull heal of hazard emitters and getting your shield put back up. It's pretty damn good. In fact, the Borg shield is actually pretty damn good too. The Assimilated set is what I'm going for my Romulan, as my only set. The shield itself, its only downfalling is it only reduces plasma damage to shields, and it's only by 15%. But it does give you +5 shield power, and it's regenerative. So that can't be helpful. In continuation with using the Romulan set, because it needs some use, I got the 0-point conduit on here. And the set bonuses are 7.6 plasma damage and 15.2 EPS boost. EPS is good. Again, I don't have a lot of things on this character that boost EPS. And the set 3 is Plasma Hyperflux. It's got a 2-minute recharge, and it gives you special firing mode on the experimental Romulan plasma beam, which increases its damage, and it does a high damage plasma burn for 10 seconds. And it also decreases your enemy's damage resistance for 10 seconds as well. So it's an okay ability. It's pretty good. Ideally, I should have the other torp on here as well, to make it more of a themed build. I can't grab the Omega Torp actually because it's in my bank. But if you want to go for the full themed, definitely put the Omega Torp and the kinetic cutting beam in the place of these two Romulan plasma beams, and there you go. The reason to go with the full plasma, or the full Romulan set, is because it does use plasma. There's plasma boosts. The 0-point conduit's a good conduit in its own right, and it resists shield drain, which is good because this ship actually does fantastically against the Borg. And keeping in line with more plasma damage, there's particle generator, minus threat plus plasma. And I go with minus threat because I like to stay alive. I tend to do a lot more damage than people in pugs, especially. And when I go with my fleet, or I'm on a really good team, it doesn't matter about aggro because, you know, we all compete for damage so much anyways that everything dies in a few seconds and it doesn't really matter. So it's minus threat. And that's what I tend to go for, like I said. And I also bought these consoles a long time ago, back when I needed the threat reduction, because I didn't have the defensive capabilities that I do now. So the second one, just to keep with boosting plasma damage, I went with the emitter array. And then obviously 3 vulnerability locators plus plasma. Traits are all the same as they were in the last video. And as you can see from the last video, like I said, it's the same layout as my Cheyenne, or my Mirror Heavy Cruiser, whatever you want to call it. But you get the same BOF layout. The Lieutenant Tactical, he's got Torp Spread 1 and Beam Fire at Will 2. I've got my Romulan in there with Tact Team. Got a Betazoid. I didn't really care about the duty officer. Well, I've actually got a decent bridge officer layout with this, but I didn't necessarily put too much focus into it. It's got a Betazoid with Engineering Team 1, Ox to Damps 1, Dam 2, and Ox to Structural Integrity Field 3. So it does have that extra healing. And I've used a duty officer as well to extend the time of Ox to Damps. So I don't have it up all the time, but I've got it up most of the time. And that's why I've moved it to this tray. Got my Borg with double emergency power to shields. And because I take on the Borg a lot, I needed polarized hull, hazard emitters 2, and gravity well to collect up some spheres and stuff. And gravity well is why I have a particle generator on here, because I'm not spec'd into particle generators. As you can see, I have completely neglected science on this character, because it was completely wasted when I was spec'd into it. Even my auxiliary power is getting a little shafted. Ship stats are pretty decent. Power transfer rate is at 125, same as the other ship, but there's a bit more crew. You get an extra 200 crew compared to a Cheyenne. You pay for it because it's a bit slower, but the hull's a bit stronger. In this instance, 54.4k. With a maximum defense, though, of only 67.7. Or the 10% difference from having the counter command set. Hull repair rate, because of the Borg set, because of more crew, is at 227.7 per minute. Regenerative shield, so they were generating 285.2 shields every 6 seconds. And their capacity is 7.1k in this instance. Now, my damage resistances are all the base ones at 12.7 and 11.2. But again, because Ox to Damps runs about 80% of the time, I'm actually running... Well, I'll show you what I'm running for resistances. Just let me make sure I do have the proper duty officer there. Yep. I have my matter-antimatter specialist. And I'm also using Ox to Sif in here. Something I forgot about. So I'm using both of these, because as you'll see, Ox to Sif grants 41.3 all damage, and Ox to Damps grants 40 all energy damage, and 48 kinetic. So at the lowest I've got 34.7 for my resists, and 36 for kinetic. It's pretty good. Tact stats, 25 bonus accuracy, up to 40. With my tactical advantage kicking in. Critical severity is a little low. It's on the lower side for my ships at 87.8, and the crit chance is in the middle of the road at 16.7. That's just because of limited space and because of fitting in those science consoles. But they needed somewhere to go. I bought them, I should use them, right? And they fit with this build. Flight speed is 27.2. With Ox to Damps, it's 40.48, and the turn rate is 21.1 with Ox to Damps, which looks like this. Kick it into full speed. Ox to Damps is going to kick out soon. I think it just did. It's not the most maneuverable cruiser in the world, but it looks cool. And while you're charging at enemies, you've got a lot of four weapons going. So, comparing this with the Mirror Heavy Cruiser, because I kind of have to, because they're in the same class. A ship, you get them for free. They're both relatively the same. You trade a little bit of maneuverability from the Mirror Heavy Cruiser to get you a bit more survivability with the Support Cruiser. And the Support Cruiser, I think, is a little less customizable. But I've honestly never checked, because why would you change the look of the Enterprise? So that's how it looks in my mind. It's got one look, and that's all it ever needs, and it's beautiful the way it is. In terms of looks, they both win. In terms of performance, they both do about the same. They're themed builds. This is a little more general purpose, but generally it's most at home taking on the Borg. And you can kind of multi-purpose the Cheyenne, but it's most at home taking on the Undine. And it's kind of funny that I've got two free and arguably my weakest ships taking on arguably the strongest enemies in the Star Trek universe, but that's how it is. Now, you do lose a science console, and if you're a science captain wanting to fly a cruiser, you're probably going to want to go with the Mirror Heavy cruiser because it has a little bit more science capability in that instance. If you use a lot of universal consoles, the console layout doesn't really matter, but this is more engineering biased. The funny thing is I don't find it more tactically biased. I don't find it more tactically capable. I find it less tactically capable. Because of the slower turn rate, it really benefits from broadsiding a lot more than the Cheyenne would. At best, this will be running a turn rate of 21. Whereas 20% of the time, it's only going to be running a turn rate of 14. Which is probably another reason why the torpedo never went onto the back. That's what you'd have to do to get it to be a full themed ship, or you'd have to ditch some of the Romulan stuff, and I mean, you could ditch the Romulan torpedo and go with the full 3-piece Borg set bonus, but then I'd have no use for the Romulan torpedo, and I really like it. It's just, as I was saying earlier, because of what they've done with photons, it detracts from plasma torpedoes. For a while, they were the king, because you had the Omega plasma torpedo, you had the Romulan hyperplasma. They were quick firing, heavy damage over time. They're really boss for torpedoes, but they were also not really necessary. They didn't make you use torpedoes. So they're not game changers. And that's why they sit in ships like this. It's also a big reason why the critical chance and the critical severity are both low on this ship. And in fact, the attack stats are lower on this ship. So I'm willing to bet if I parse them both, under similar circumstances, this ship is going to be outperformed. But it can do more of a support role then. You'd think, but again, because of the bridge officer layout, not necessarily. And because of the way engineering consoles work, they all help you. They don't help your team members. They're not particle generators, which will, make gravity wells do more damage to multiple enemies. They're not graviton generators that allow you to repel things and hold things better. It's all you. It's your damage resistance, it's your power transfer rate, it's your power setting bonuses, it's your turn rate. So it's almost not as good of a support cruiser as the Mirror Heavy cruiser, even though the Heavy cruiser is more of a tactical cruiser. It's jumbly. Ultimately, you can get about the same out of either ship. Especially if you don't do them themed. They're both really good ships. They both look really good. The Agamemnon does not get a lot of flying time. Which is, I take on the Borg. But it's a cool ship. I really like it. I will show you guys how it is in combat at some point. And I just realized, although I'm recording these in this order, and the last video I did for the Mirror Heavy Cruiser has to go first, because I did it first and gave the details of what's going on first, I just realized I might look like an idiot if I decide that the support cruiser isn't worthy to go second and I do another one, or I don't get the videos done for it. by next week. Yeah. This might seem out of place. Fortunately, I left this all at the end, and you can skip over this, so you don't have to watch it. So, that's my take on this ship. It can be better, obviously. I don't have it configured in the best way, because you make compromises in terms of making a theme. That's just how it goes. But all in all, it's a good ship. If you have one, you don't really have a need for another cruiser. You know, I think that's kind of become another part of my focus on this series, too, is to show you what you can do without spending cash. And again, everything on here is all free. You can buy it with dill and stuff you can make in the game, and the good stuff comes from the reps and the fleets. Well, as always, guys, thank you for watching. I'm going to record another one of these, so I will see you in about 3 seconds after I restart the Star Trek music again. I'm never going to get through this again. I listened to this morning when I thought I wasn't going to be interrupted, and I was doing some testing, but was interrupted and just continued listening to it throughout the rest of the day. I'm probably going to hate this music by the end of it. Thank you for watching, everybody. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.